Hi everyone, I'm Sarah, and today I'm going to share with you the incredible story of Victoria Martinez. This story is titled, "Parents Gave My Inheritance to My Brother. You'll Just Waste It. Then the Second Will Arrived." Victoria thought the worst betrayal was watching her parents hand over her inheritance to her golden child brother. She had no idea that everything she believed about her family was about to be shattered by a document that would change her life forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Victoria Martinez had always understood her place in the family hierarchy. At 32 years old, she occupied the position of the responsible daughter, the one who maintained steady employment, managed her finances prudently, and never caused her parents significant worry or embarrassment. Her role was clearly defined within the Martinez family structure, distinct from, but complementary to, her older brother Daniel's more celebrated position as the family's pride and achievement. The Martinez family had built their lives around a small but thriving accounting firm in Sacramento, California, established by Victoria and Daniel's father, Roberto Martinez, nearly 40 years earlier. Roberto had arrived in California as a young immigrant from Mexico with an accounting degree from Universidad Nacional Autónoma de México, and an unwavering determination to build a successful practice serving the growing Latino business community in the Sacramento Valley. The firm Martinez & Associates had evolved from Roberto's one-person operation conducted from a shared office space into a respected practice employing 12 staff members and serving more than 300 business clients throughout Northern California. The company's success had enabled Roberto and his wife Carmen to purchase a beautiful home in the affluent pocket area of Sacramento, send both children to private schools, and accumulate substantial assets that represented the culmination of decades of disciplined work and strategic financial management. Victoria's relationship with the family business had always been complex and somewhat ambiguous. Unlike Daniel, who had pursued an MBA and demonstrated clear interest in eventually taking over the firm's operations, Victoria had chosen a different professional path that utilized her analytical skills while maintaining independence from family business dynamics. She worked as a senior financial analyst for a mid-sized technology company in downtown Sacramento, a position that required sophisticated understanding of corporate finance, budgeting processes, and strategic planning methodologies. Her career choice had been deliberate and strategic, driven by her desire to establish professional credibility independent of family connections, while utilizing the financial acumen she had inherited from her father. The technology sector provided opportunities for advancement based on merit and performance rather than family relationships, allowing Victoria to build expertise and earn recognition through her own efforts and capabilities. The work itself engaged Victoria's analytical mind and provided genuine satisfaction through solving complex financial modeling challenges and contributing to strategic business decisions that affected company performance. She had earned 3 promotions during her 8 years with the company, increasing her salary to a level that supported a comfortable lifestyle and enabled her to accumulate savings that exceeded most people's retirement accounts despite her relatively young age. Victoria's apartment in the trendy Midtown district of Sacramento reflected her practical approach to lifestyle management and financial planning. The 2-bedroom unit in a converted historic building provided modern amenities and convenient access to restaurants, cultural venues, and recreational activities, while maintaining reasonable monthly expenses that allowed her to maximize her savings and investment contributions. Her social life centered around a carefully cultivated network of colleagues, former classmates, and friends who shared similar interests in professional development, travel, and cultural activities. These relationships provided emotional support and intellectual stimulation without the complexity and emotional intensity that characterized her family interactions, particularly regarding her brother's favored status and her parents' expectations for their respective roles within the family structure. The contrast between Victoria's measured, independent lifestyle and Daniel's more dramatic and visible achievements had shaped family dynamics for more than a decade. Daniel's MBA from Stanford Graduate School of Business had been celebrated as a family triumph that validated Roberto and Carmen's sacrifices, and confirmed their success in providing their children with opportunities for advancement that exceeded their own educational backgrounds. Daniel's subsequent career progression through positions at major consulting firms and investment banking organizations had provided regular occasions for family celebration and community recognition. His marriage to Isabella Chambers, a successful attorney from a prominent Sacramento family, had been viewed as evidence of Daniel's ability to succeed in elite professional and social circles that remained somewhat foreign to Roberto and Carmen despite their own business success. The expectation that Daniel would eventually assume leadership of Martinez and Associates had been established early in his career and reinforced through regular discussions about business succession planning, strategic development initiatives, and the firm's long-term growth prospects. Roberto had invested substantial resources in preparing Daniel for this transition, including advanced accounting education, leadership development programs, and gradual assumption of client relationship management responsibilities. Victoria's role within this family business narrative had been consistently supportive but secondary. Her financial expertise was valued and occasionally sought for specific analytical projects, but her career independence was viewed as evidence that she did not require the same level of direct family business involvement or financial support that Daniel's preparation for succession leadership demanded. This dynamic had crystallized around discussions of inheritance and estate planning that had become more frequent as Roberto and Carmen entered their mid-70s and began addressing questions about wealth transfer and business succession. The conversations typically occurred during family gatherings and holiday celebrations, often initiated by Roberto's references to the complex legal and financial considerations involved in transferring business ownership while minimizing tax implications and ensuring continued operational success. Victoria had participated in these discussions with professional interest and genuine concern for her parents, financial security, and the business's continued viability. Her understanding of corporate finance and tax planning provided valuable insights that contributed to the family's strategic thinking about succession issues. But her contributions were consistently framed as advisory, rather than directly self-interested. The assumption underlying these conversations was that Daniel would inherit the accounting firm and assume primary responsibility for supporting Roberto and Carmen during their retirement years, while Victoria would receive financial assets that provided security without requiring active involvement in family business operations. This division seemed logical and equitable given their respective career choices and demonstrated interests in business management versus professional independence. However, Victoria had begun to recognize subtle patterns in family conversations that suggested the inheritance arrangements might be more complex and potentially less favorable to her interests than she had previously understood. References to her practical nature and simple lifestyle requirements seemed to imply that her parents believed she needed less financial support than Daniel, whose business leadership responsibilities and social obligations required greater resources. The most troubling indication of potential inheritance inequality had emerged during a recent family dinner, where Roberto had made casual reference to Victoria's tendency to, quote, make safe choices, and her lack of big-picture vision regarding business and investment opportunities. The comments had been delivered in an affectionate tone that suggested paternal pride in her stability and reliability, but they had also revealed assumptions about her capabilities and ambitions that did not align with her own understanding of her achievements and potential. Victoria's professional success in the technology sector had required exactly the kind of strategic thinking and risk assessment that Roberto seemed to believe she lacked. Her role involved evaluating complex investment proposals, modeling various business scenarios, and making recommendations that affected millions of dollars in corporate resources. The suggestion that she was somehow less capable of managing substantial financial assets or making sophisticated business decisions reflected fundamental misunderstanding of her professional capabilities and personal judgment. The growing awareness that her parents might view her as less capable or deserving of substantial inheritance had created an undercurrent of anxiety that affected her interactions with family members and her long-term financial planning considerations. Victoria had always assumed that her parents' wealth would be divided equitably between their children, providing her with resources that would enhance her financial security and create opportunities for pursuing personal interests and philanthropic activities during middle age and retirement. The possibility that inheritance distributions might reflect perceived rather than actual capabilities or contributions created uncertainty about financial planning assumptions that had guided her career decisions and lifestyle choices for more than a decade. If her parents intended to provide Daniel with substantially greater inheritance resources based on his business leadership role, Victoria might need to reconsider her approach to savings, investment, and long-term financial security planning. More significantly, the realization that her parents might undervalue her capabilities and achievements challenged fundamental assumptions about family relationships and mutual respect that had provided emotional foundation throughout her adult life. Victoria had always believed that her parents recognized and appreciated her professional accomplishments and personal integrity, even if they celebrated Daniel's more visible successes with greater enthusiasm and public recognition. The prospect that inheritance planning might reflect differential assessment of their children's worthiness or capability represented a potential betrayal of trust and mutual respect that would require significant reassessment of family relationships and personal priorities. Victoria had invested substantial emotional energy in maintaining close family connections despite the challenges created by Daniel's favored status. But inheritance inequality based on perceived limitations would suggest that her parents' love and respect were more conditional than she had previously understood. As autumn approached and family conversations about estate planning became more frequent and specific, Victoria found herself paying closer attention to subtle indicators of her parents' intentions and assumptions. The comfortable routine of family gatherings and shared celebrations began to feel more complex and potentially problematic, as she recognized the possibility that her secure position within the family structure might be based on misunderstanding rather than genuine acceptance of her value and contributions. The intersection of family dynamics, inheritance expectations, and personal financial security created a web of concerns that affected Victoria's daily experience and future planning in ways she had not previously anticipated. The approaching resolution of these uncertainties would test not only her financial security, but also her understanding of family relationships and her own identity within the Martinez family structure. Standing in her midtown apartment on a quiet Sunday evening, reviewing financial statements and investment portfolios that represented years of disciplined saving and strategic planning, Victoria Martinez was about to discover that everything she believed about her place in her family's future was about to change in ways that would challenge her understanding of love, respect, and family loyalty forever. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The Martinez family's weekly Sunday dinners had been a cornerstone of family unity for over 2 decades, representing continuity and shared values that had sustained relationships through various challenges and life transitions. These gatherings occurred in the formal dining room of Roberto and Carmen's pocket neighborhood home, surrounded by family photographs that documented graduations, weddings, professional achievements, and milestone celebrations spanning multiple generations. Carmen Martinez had established the tradition shortly after Daniel and Victoria completed their undergraduate degrees, recognizing that maintaining regular family connection would require intentional effort as her children pursued independent careers and developed separate social circles. The dinners provided structured opportunities for sharing professional updates, discussing personal challenges, and reinforcing family bonds that might otherwise weaken under the pressures of busy adult schedules and competing priorities. The preparation for these gatherings reflected Carmen's commitment to creating meaningful family experiences that honored their cultural heritage, while accommodating the preferences and dietary requirements of family members whose lifestyles had evolved considerably from their parents' more traditional approaches. The menu typically featured Carmen's renowned mole poblano, homemade tortillas, and desserts that required hours of careful preparation and attention to detail that demonstrated her investment in family relationship maintenance. Roberto's participation in these dinners represented rare breaks from his typically intense focus on business operations and client service responsibilities. The transition from his weekday persona as a demanding perfectionist who managed complex financial matters for hundreds of business clients to his Sunday evening role as patriarch and family conversation facilitator required conscious effort that sometimes resulted in awkward attempts to demonstrate personal interest in topics outside his professional expertise. The dynamic between Daniel and Victoria during these family gatherings had evolved significantly over the years, reflecting their different career trajectories and the subtle but persistent favoritism that characterized their parents' interactions with each child. Daniel's updates typically centered on professional achievements, business development opportunities, and strategic initiatives that demonstrated his preparation for eventual leadership of Martinez and Associates. Victoria's contributions to family conversations were generally more reserved and focused on personal rather than professional topics, partly due to her recognition that her parents possessed limited understanding of technology sector operations, and partly because she had learned that detailed discussions of her analytical work often generated polite but superficial responses that suggested genuine disinterest in her professional accomplishments. The November Sunday when inheritance planning became the primary dinner conversation topic began with Roberto's announcement that he and Carmen had completed meetings with their estate planning attorney and financial advisor to finalize arrangements for business succession and asset distribution. The tone of his introduction suggested that the decisions had been made after careful consideration, and that the family discussion would focus on explaining rather than debating the arrangements they had established. Daniel's immediate engagement with this topic contrasted sharply with Victoria's more cautious response, reflecting their different levels of involvement in previous discussions about family business operations and succession planning. Daniel had participated in multiple conversations with Roberto about client relationship management, operational efficiency improvements, and strategic growth initiatives that would support the firm's continued success under new leadership. Victoria's knowledge of these succession planning discussions had been limited to occasional references during family conversations, and her own observations of Daniel's increasing involvement in business operations that required travel to client locations and participation in professional development activities designed to prepare him for executive responsibilities. Roberto's explanation of the inheritance arrangements began with detailed justification for decisions that he characterized as reflecting careful analysis of each child's strengths, interests, and long-term financial security requirements. The presentation suggested that substantial thought had been devoted to creating arrangements that would serve each family member's best interests, while ensuring continued business success and family financial stability. The central element of the inheritance plan involved transferring primary ownership of Martinez and Associates to Daniel, along with liquid assets sufficient to support business operations during the transition period and personal resources that would enable him to maintain his current lifestyle while assuming increased professional responsibilities. This arrangement had been structured to minimize tax implications while providing Daniel with clear authority to make strategic decisions about business development and operational management. Victoria's inheritance allocation consisted primarily of the family home, investment accounts containing approximately one-third the value of Daniel's business and liquid asset inheritance, and a provision for receiving annual distributions from a trust fund that would be managed by Daniel in his capacity as successor business owner and estate executor. The disparity between these allocations was explained through Roberto's assessment that Victoria's stable career and modest lifestyle requirements meant she needed less financial support than Daniel, whose business leadership responsibilities would require substantial capital resources, and whose social and professional obligations demanded higher levels of personal expenditure. Roberto's presentation included references to Victoria's practical nature and simple tastes that suggested he viewed her contentment with her current lifestyle as evidence that she would not benefit from or effectively utilize larger inheritance amounts. These characterizations were delivered with affectionate approval, as if her moderate consumption patterns and careful financial management were virtues that made substantial wealth unnecessary or potentially harmful. Carmen's contribution to this explanation emphasized her confidence that Victoria would appreciate the security provided by homeownership and steady trust fund income, without the complications and stress that would accompany business ownership or management of substantial investment portfolios. The comments suggested genuine belief that the inheritance arrangements reflected understanding of Victoria's personality and preferences, rather than assessment of her capabilities or worthiness. Daniel's response to these inheritance details was carefully measured, combining expressions of gratitude for his parents, confidence in his business capabilities with acknowledgement of the significant responsibilities that would accompany business ownership. His comments suggested prior knowledge of these arrangements and comfort with both the financial benefits and professional obligations they represented. Victoria's initial reaction was controlled confusion that quickly evolved into deeper concern as she processed the implications of inheritance arrangements that seemed to reflect fundamental misunderstanding of her financial sophistication, career achievements, and long-term aspirations. The suggestion that she required less inheritance because of her simple lifestyle ignored her demonstrated ability to manage complex financial analysis in her professional role and her strategic approach to personal investment and savings that had produced substantial asset accumulation. The most troubling aspect of Roberto's explanation was the implicit assumption that Victoria lacked the capability or interest to contribute meaningfully to business operations or investment management decisions that would affect family financial security. This assessment contradicted her professional experience with corporate financial planning, mergers and acquisitions analysis, and strategic business development that required precisely the skills necessary for effective wealth management and business oversight. Victoria's attempt to address these misconceptions through discussion of her professional responsibilities and demonstrated financial management capabilities was met with polite but dismissive responses that suggested her parents viewed her corporate analytical work as fundamentally different from, and less relevant than, the real-world business management that Daniel would assume through succession leadership. Roberto's comment that Victoria wouldn't know what to do with business ownership responsibilities particularly stung because it revealed his complete lack of understanding regarding her daily professional activities that involved evaluating business operations, assessing financial performance, and making recommendations that affected corporate strategy and resource allocation for an organization significantly larger and more complex than Martinez and Associates. The dinner conversation continued with Roberto and Carmen elaborating on their confidence that the inheritance arrangements would serve everyone's best interests, while providing both children with financial security appropriate to their respective needs and capabilities. The certainty with which they presented these decisions suggested that modification or reconsideration was not expected or welcome. Daniel's participation in this discussion maintained careful neutrality that avoided explicit agreement with his parents' assessment of Victoria's limitations, while also refraining from challenging arrangements that provided him with substantial personal and professional advantages. His comments focused on expressing appreciation for his parents' trust and confidence, while acknowledging the responsibility he would assume for family financial welfare. Victoria's growing realization that her parents had made inheritance decisions based on misconceptions about her capabilities and interests created a complex emotional response that combined hurt, anger, and disappointment, with recognition that challenging these arrangements would require confronting deeply held family assumptions about her identity and potential contributions. The evening concluded with Roberto's expression of satisfaction that estate planning had been completed in a manner that reflected careful consideration of each family member's needs and circumstances. His comfort with these decisions suggested genuine belief that he had acted as a responsible father and business owner in creating arrangements that would benefit everyone involved. Carmen's final comments emphasized her hope that both children understood the love and careful thought that had influenced their inheritance planning, and her confidence that the arrangements would provide long-term security and happiness for the entire family. The emotional sincerity of her statement made questioning the underlying assumptions more difficult and potentially hurtful. The drive from her parents' home back to her midtown apartment provided Victoria with time to process the full implications of inheritance arrangements that seemed to diminish her worth and capabilities, in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about family relationships and mutual respect. The comfortable routine of Sunday family dinners had been transformed into evidence of how thoroughly her parents misunderstood her professional achievements and personal potential. The realization that Daniel had likely known about these inheritance plans for some time, based on his measured response and apparent lack of surprise at the details, added another layer of disappointment regarding family dynamics and communication patterns that had excluded her from important decisions affecting her financial future and family relationships. The inheritance arrangements represented more than financial inequality. They reflected her parents' assessment that she was less capable, less ambitious, and less deserving of resources that could enable significant personal and professional development during middle age and beyond. This assessment contradicted her own understanding of her achievements and potential, while suggesting that her careful financial management and professional success were viewed as evidence of limited rather than sophisticated capability. The most painful aspect of the evening's revelations was the recognition that her parents' love and respect appeared to be conditional upon acceptance of limitations that did not align with her actual capabilities or aspirations. The inheritance arrangements suggested that maintaining family harmony would require accepting a diminished role that contradicted her professional identity and personal understanding of her potential contributions to family success and security. Standing in her apartment later that evening, reviewing the financial planning documents and investment portfolios that represented years of strategic decision-making and disciplined resource management, Victoria Martinez understood that the inheritance conversation had revealed fundamental disconnections between her family's perceptions and her actual capabilities that would require difficult decisions about challenging established assumptions or accepting limitations that she knew were inaccurate and unfair. The comfortable certainty of family relationships and shared values had been replaced by awareness that love and support were more conditional than she had previously understood, and that securing fair treatment would require courage to confront family dynamics that had been established over decades of subtle but persistent favoritism toward her brother, and underestimation of her own potential. The concept of success within the Martinez family had been shaped by Roberto's immigrant experience and his determination to establish social and economic legitimacy within American professional circles that had initially seemed foreign and potentially exclusionary. His journey from recent arrival with foreign credentials to respected business owner serving hundreds of clients had required navigation of cultural expectations, professional standards, and social hierarchies that influenced his understanding of what constituted meaningful achievement and secure positioning within American society. Roberto's early years in Sacramento had been marked by intense focus on credential recognition, professional licensing, and client acquisition strategies that would establish Martinez and Associates as a legitimate competitor to established accounting firms that possess generational advantages of family connections, inherited client bases, and cultural familiarity with American business practices. The challenges he had overcome through disciplined effort and strategic positioning had created deep appreciation for conventional markers of professional success and social acceptance. The values that emerged from Roberto's immigrant experience emphasized traditional pathways to achievement that minimized risk, while maximizing credibility within established professional and social networks. Educational attainment at prestigious institutions, professional advancement through recognized career hierarchies, marriage within socially prominent families, and accumulation of visible wealth indicators represented security and validation that Roberto had never taken for granted during his own challenging early career development. Carmen's background had reinforced these values through her own experience, navigating corporate advancement as a Latina woman in financial services during an era when such opportunities required exceptional performance and careful attention to professional presentation and networking strategies. Her success in reaching senior management positions had been achieved through meticulous adherence to conventional expectations and demonstrated competence in areas that commanded respect from colleagues and superiors who might otherwise have questioned her qualifications or commitment. The combination of Roberto and Carmen's experiences had created family culture that prioritized achievement recognition, professional prestige, and social positioning as essential components of long-term security and respect within their adopted community. These values were not superficial or materialistic, but represented hard-won understanding of how American professional success was measured and rewarded by institutions and individuals whose approval affected access to opportunities, resources, and social acceptance. Daniel's trajectory through prestigious educational institutions and elite professional environments had aligned perfectly with these family values, while providing regular validation that Roberto and Carmen's sacrifices and strategic investments in their children's development had produced the intended results. His acceptance at Stanford Graduate School of Business represented admission to the kind of institutional network that could provide lifelong career advantages and social connections that would benefit future generations of the Martinez family. The MBA program had exposed Daniel to classmates whose family backgrounds included generational wealth, political connections, and business relationships that represented the ultimate goal of immigrant professional advancement. His ability to compete successfully within this elite environment and develop friendships with individuals from established American professional families demonstrated that the Martinez family had achieved genuine integration into upper-middle-class American society. Daniel's subsequent career progression through consulting and investment banking positions had provided continuous evidence of his ability to succeed within the most competitive and prestigious professional environments available to business school graduates. The annual salary increases, bonus payments, and promotional advancement he achieved confirmed that his expensive education had produced measurable returns on investment, while positioning him for continued upward mobility. His marriage to Isabella Chambers had represented perhaps the greatest validation of the Martinez family's social advancement and acceptance within Sacramento's professional community. Isabella's family had established roots in Northern California during the 19th century and had accumulated substantial real estate holdings, political connections, and social prominence that provided access to networks and opportunities that remained closed to many families regardless of their financial resources or professional achievements. The wedding celebration had been featured in Sacramento's society publications and attended by judges, elected officials, prominent business leaders, and established families, whose presence confirmed that Daniel had achieved marriage into the kind of social circles that represented complete integration into American elite professional culture. The validation this provided to Roberto and Carmen extended beyond personal pride to include confirmation that their family had successfully navigated the complex requirements for achieving lasting social and economic security. Victoria's career path had initially been viewed with approval as evidence of her intelligence and professional competence, but her choice to work within corporate structures rather than pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities or traditional prestige professions had gradually been interpreted as evidence of limitations rather than strategic positioning. Her steady advancement within the technology sector was acknowledged as respectable achievement, but it lacked the social recognition and networking advantages that Roberto and Carmen associated with truly successful professional development. The technology industry itself was viewed by Roberto and Carmen with some suspicion and confusion, representing rapid change and uncertain long-term stability that contrasted with the established professions and business sectors where they had achieved success and social recognition. Victoria's expertise in financial modeling and corporate analysis was appreciated in abstract terms, but her parents lacked sufficient understanding of technology sector operations to fully recognize the sophistication and strategic importance of her professional contributions. Victoria's lifestyle choices had been consistently interpreted through the lens of family expectations that equated visible consumption and social positioning with professional success and personal fulfillment. Her preference for a modest apartment over suburban homeownership was viewed as evidence of limited ambition rather than strategic financial planning that maximized savings and investment opportunities while providing lifestyle flexibility and urban convenience. Her social relationships with colleagues and friends who shared interests in cultural activities, travel, and intellectual pursuits were viewed as pleasant but insufficiently prestigious compared to Daniel's networking within elite professional circles and participation in exclusive social organizations that provided access to influential community leaders and potential business development opportunities. The most significant disconnect between Victoria's actual achievements and her family's assessment of her success involved their fundamental misunderstanding of her financial sophistication and wealth accumulation strategies. Roberto and Carmen were aware that Victoria maintained steady employment and lived within her means, but they lacked detailed knowledge of her investment portfolio performance, retirement planning strategies, and accumulated assets that actually exceeded many of their contemporaries, despite her younger age and shorter career duration. Victoria's approach to personal finance reflected sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, tax optimization strategies, and long-term wealth building that would have impressed Roberto if he had possessed sufficient knowledge to evaluate her investment decisions and portfolio management techniques. Her consistent contributions to retirement accounts, strategic asset allocation across different investment categories, and careful attention to expense ratios and tax implications demonstrated exactly the kind of financial discipline and strategic thinking that had enabled Roberto to build his own successful business. However, the invisibility of Victoria's financial success and the complexity of modern investment strategies meant that her parents continued to view her through outdated assumptions about wealth accumulation and professional achievement that emphasized visible consumption and traditional business ownership over sophisticated portfolio management and strategic career development within large organizations. The inheritance arrangements that Roberto had announced reflected these deeply embedded assumptions about success measurement and the different capabilities and needs of his children. Daniel's future business ownership was viewed as requiring substantial capital resources because traditional business operations involved visible assets, client relationships, and operational expenses that could be easily understood and evaluated by people familiar with conventional professional service delivery. Victoria's corporate employment was viewed as providing steady but limited income that required less sophisticated financial management and generated fewer opportunities for wealth accumulation or community influence. The assumption that she would be satisfied with home ownership and modest trust fund distributions reflected genuine belief that her lifestyle preferences and professional limitations made larger inheritance allocations unnecessary or potentially problematic. These assumptions were reinforced by Roberto's observation of successful business owners and professionals within his network whose children had demonstrated varying levels of capability and interest in managing substantial financial resources. His exposure to situations where inherited wealth had been mismanaged or had created family conflicts influenced his belief that inheritance distributions should reflect demonstrated business acumen and professional achievement rather than simple equality between siblings. The cultural context that shaped Roberto's thinking about inheritance planning included traditional attitudes about gender roles and professional expectations that influenced his assessment of appropriate financial responsibilities and opportunities for his children. Although he was proud of Victoria's professional success and personal independence, his fundamental assumptions about business leadership and wealth management were influenced by generational and cultural perspectives that associated these responsibilities primarily with male family members. Carmen's support for these inheritance arrangements reflected her own professional experience navigating corporate environments where advancement opportunities were often limited by unofficial assumptions about women's long-term career commitment and leadership potential. Her success had been achieved through exceptional performance within defined roles rather than entrepreneurial risk-taking or business ownership, creating perspective that supported Roberto's assessment of appropriate inheritance distributions based on demonstrated business leadership capabilities. The combination of immigrant experience, traditional professional values, gender role expectations, and limited understanding of modern financial planning had created family culture where success was measured through conventional markers that failed to recognize Victoria's sophisticated achievements and substantial potential for continued wealth accumulation and community contribution through non-traditional pathways. Victoria's growing awareness of these limitations within her family's perspective created complex emotional responses that combined frustration with the unfairness of their assumptions, disappointment in their failure to recognize her accomplishments, and determination to demonstrate that their assessment of her capabilities and potential was fundamentally inaccurate. The golden standard trap that had shaped her family's definition of success represented broader societal limitations that prevented recognition of diverse pathways to achievement and contribution. Victoria understood that challenging these assumptions would require not only demonstrating her financial and professional capabilities, but also helping her family recognize that their traditional measures of success were incomplete and potentially discriminatory. The inheritance arrangements had crystallized decades of subtle but persistent underestimation of Victoria's potential, forcing her to confront the reality that maintaining family relationships would require either accepting limitations she knew were inaccurate or challenging deeply held beliefs that had provided her parents with security and social positioning throughout their adult lives. Standing at the intersection of family loyalty and personal integrity, Victoria Martinez faced the choice between accepting diminished expectations or pursuing validation of her true capabilities, regardless of the potential cost to established family relationships and shared assumptions about success, achievement, and the different roles that children should play in securing family legacy and continued prosperity. The revelation that would fundamentally alter Victoria Martinez's understanding of her worth and potential arrived on a Tuesday morning in December, wrapped in the mundane packaging of routine corporate responsibilities that had characterized her professional life for nearly a decade. Victoria was conducting a comprehensive financial analysis of a potential acquisition target for her technology company, evaluating a mid-sized software development firm whose innovative products and strong client relationships made it an attractive strategic investment opportunity. The acquisition analysis required Victoria to examine every aspect of the target company's operations, including revenue streams, client contracts, operational expenses, management capabilities, and growth potential that would justify the substantial purchase price her company was considering. This type of comprehensive business evaluation represented exactly the kind of sophisticated analytical work that Victoria had mastered through years of corporate experience, yet it was precisely the type of strategic thinking her family believed she was incapable of performing. The target company, Meridian Software Solutions, had been founded 8 years earlier by 2 Stanford computer science graduates who had identified market opportunities in custom business software development for mid-sized companies that needed sophisticated solutions but could not afford enterprise-level implementations. The founders had built their business from a 2-person operation working from a shared office space into a thriving firm employing 45 technical and administrative staff members while serving more than 200 clients throughout the western United States. The financial performance data that Victoria analyzed revealed annual revenue of $12 million, with profit margins exceeding 30%, figures that represented remarkable success for a relatively young company operating in a highly competitive market sector. The founders had demonstrated exactly the kind of entrepreneurial vision, strategic execution, and business development capabilities that Roberto Martinez had consistently claimed were necessary for building substantial wealth and achieving meaningful professional success. As Victoria reviewed the founders' personal financial statements and compensation history, she discovered details that provided stark context for her own family's inheritance arrangements and assumptions about business ownership and wealth accumulation. The 2 founders, neither of whom had possessed substantial family resources or inheritance advantages when they launched Meridian Software Solutions, had each accumulated personal net worth exceeding $3 million through their equity ownership and profit distributions from the company they had created. The comparison between these entrepreneurs' achievements and Victoria's own professional trajectory was both illuminating and deeply troubling. The founders had started their business with combined savings of less than $100,000 and had built substantial wealth through exactly the kind of innovative thinking, market analysis, and strategic execution that Victoria performed daily in her corporate role. The primary difference was that they had been willing to accept the risks and uncertainties of business ownership in exchange for the potential rewards that came with building something of lasting value. Victoria possessed technical knowledge, financial expertise, and industry experience that exceeded what either founder had brought to their venture. Yet she had channeled these capabilities toward advancing someone else's business objectives, rather than pursuing independent opportunities that could generate comparable wealth and professional satisfaction. The realization that her conservative career choices had potentially cost her millions of dollars in wealth accumulation was overshadowed by recognition that her family's assumptions about her limitations had discouraged exactly the kind of entrepreneurial thinking that could have produced extraordinary results. The Meridian analysis required Victoria to project future performance scenarios and assess the strategic value that acquisition would provide to her company's long-term competitive positioning. The modeling process revealed that the founders' business had captured market opportunities that larger corporations had overlooked or dismissed as insufficiently profitable, demonstrating how innovative thinking and entrepreneurial execution could create substantial value in segments that established companies had failed to serve effectively. The irony was inescapable and painful. Victoria was using her analytical capabilities to help her corporate employer identify and acquire a business that had been built by entrepreneurs whose initial resources and technical expertise had been inferior to her own accumulated advantages. She was essentially recommending that her company pay a premium to acquire achievements that she could potentially have created herself if she had possessed the confidence and family support to pursue independent business development rather than corporate employment. The acquisition recommendation that Victoria prepared for her executive team emphasized the strategic value of Meridian's client relationships, technical capabilities, and market positioning that would enhance her company's service offerings, while providing access to customer segments that had been difficult to penetrate through traditional sales and marketing approaches. The document represented some of her finest analytical work, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, competitive positioning, and strategic integration challenges that would determine the acquisition's ultimate success or failure. However, completing this analysis forced Victoria to confront the uncomfortable reality that her professional expertise was being used to identify and evaluate business opportunities that she could have pursued herself under different circumstances. The founders of Meridian had achieved financial success and professional recognition through exactly the kind of innovative problem-solving and strategic thinking that Victoria had developed through years of corporate experience, yet they had been willing to accept risks and pursue independent opportunities that she had avoided due to family expectations and personal risk tolerance. The executive presentation of Victoria's acquisition recommendation was scheduled for the following Friday morning, providing her with several days to refine her analysis while processing the broader implications of what she had discovered about entrepreneurial wealth creation and her own unutilized potential. The preparation process required extensive research into industry trends, competitive dynamics, and market opportunities that reinforced her understanding of how independent business development could generate extraordinary financial returns for individuals with appropriate expertise and sufficient courage to pursue ambitious goals. Victoria's evening routine during this period became increasingly focused on researching successful technology entrepreneurs whose backgrounds and career trajectories provided insight into alternative pathways she might have pursued under different family circumstances and personal assumptions about risk and opportunity. The stories she discovered revealed common patterns of technical expertise, market insight, and persistent execution that had enabled individuals with modest initial resources to build substantial businesses and accumulate significant wealth. The most compelling examples involved entrepreneurs who had transitioned from corporate employment to independent business development during their 30s, utilizing industry experience and professional networks they had developed through traditional career progression to identify and pursue market opportunities that larger organizations had missed or ignored. These transitions typically required accepting substantial short-term uncertainty and financial risk in exchange for potential long-term rewards that far exceeded what corporate employment could provide. Victoria's financial analysis of her own situation revealed that she possessed resources and capabilities that compared favorably with the initial advantages that many successful entrepreneurs had leveraged to build thriving businesses. Her accumulated savings exceeded the initial capital that most technology entrepreneurs had accessed when launching their ventures, while her analytical expertise and industry knowledge provided competitive advantages that could differentiate her potential business from established competitors. The personal financial modeling that Victoria conducted during late evening hours demonstrated that entrepreneurial success comparable to what the Meridian founders had achieved would provide wealth accumulation that exceeded her inheritance expectations by substantial margins. Even modest business success would generate financial independence that would eliminate her dependence on family resources, while providing security and lifestyle options that far exceeded what her current career trajectory could deliver. The psychological impact of these realizations was profound and transformative. Victoria understood that her family's inheritance arrangements reflected not only misunderstanding of her capabilities, but also systematic underestimation of the wealth-building potential that she possessed through her accumulated expertise and resources. The modest inheritance allocation that Roberto had justified through references to her limited needs and simple lifestyle requirements represented a fraction of what she could potentially generate through independent business development. The Friday morning presentation of her Meridian acquisition recommendation proceeded successfully, with executive team members praising the thoroughness of her analysis and the strategic insights she had provided regarding market opportunities and integration challenges. The positive reception confirmed her analytical capabilities while highlighting the irony that she was using her most sophisticated professional skills to help others identify and acquire business opportunities that she could potentially pursue herself. During the post-presentation discussion, Victoria's CEO commented that the acquisition would provide access to entrepreneurial talent and market insights that were difficult to develop within large corporate structures, acknowledging that innovative business development often required the kind of independent thinking and risk tolerance that corporate environments could actually discourage rather than foster. The observation was intended as praise for Victoria's analytical work, but it also highlighted organizational limitations that could prevent her from utilizing her full potential within corporate employment structures. The combination of completing the Meridian analysis, researching entrepreneurial success stories, and receiving recognition for her strategic thinking capabilities created a psychological transformation that Victoria had not anticipated when she began the routine acquisition evaluation project. The comfortable assumptions about career progression, financial security, and family expectations that had guided her professional decisions for nearly a decade had been revealed as potentially limiting beliefs that prevented her from pursuing opportunities aligned with her actual capabilities and ambitions. The awakening moment crystallized during her weekend review of personal financial statements and career development objectives that she updated quarterly as part of her disciplined approach to professional and personal goal management. The documents represented years of steady progress toward conventional success markers, but they also revealed the limitations of a career strategy based on minimizing risk, rather than maximizing potential contribution and financial reward. Victoria understood that her family's inheritance arrangements had inadvertently provided her with the motivation and justification she needed to pursue independent business development that could demonstrate her actual capabilities, while generating wealth and professional satisfaction that exceeded what conventional corporate employment could provide. The modest inheritance allocation that had initially disappointed her could actually become the catalyst for achieving financial independence that far exceeded her family's limited expectations and assessment of her potential. The Meridian acquisition analysis had become more than a routine corporate assignment. It had revealed the gap between Victoria's current trajectory and her unrealized potential, while providing specific examples of how entrepreneurial execution could transform expertise and market insight into substantial business success and personal wealth accumulation. Standing at her apartment window on a clear December evening, reviewing the financial projections and business development strategies she had been researching throughout the week, Victoria Martinez realized that her comfortable corporate career had become a limitation rather than an achievement, and that her family's underestimation of her potential had accidentally provided her with the motivation she needed to pursue the kind of independent success that would validate her true capabilities while exceeding their most optimistic expectations for her future achievements and contributions. The transformation from recognition of untapped potential to systematic preparation for independent business development required Victoria Martinez to fundamentally reassess her relationship with financial planning, professional development, and strategic risk management. The awakening moment that had crystallized during her analysis of Meridian software solutions created urgency around converting her accumulated corporate expertise into actionable business opportunities that could validate her capabilities while generating financial independence that exceeded her family's inheritance expectations. Victoria's approach to entrepreneurial preparation reflected the same analytical rigor and methodical planning that had characterized her corporate financial analysis work. Rather than pursuing business development through impulsive decision-making or emotional reaction to family underestimation, she committed to systematic evaluation of market opportunities, resource requirements, and strategic positioning that would maximize her probability of achieving sustainable success while minimizing unnecessary financial and professional risks. The initial phase of her preparation involved comprehensive assessment of her accumulated financial resources, professional expertise, industry relationships, and personal capabilities that could provide competitive advantages within target market segments. This self-evaluation process required honest assessment of both her strengths and limitations, ensuring that her business development strategy would align with realistic rather than optimistic assumptions about her preparedness for entrepreneurial challenges. Victoria's financial foundation represented nearly a decade of disciplined saving and strategic investment management that had produced accumulated assets significantly exceeding what most entrepreneurs possessed when launching independent ventures. Her retirement account balances, investment portfolio performance, and liquid savings provided capital resources that could fund business operations for extended periods, while allowing her to maintain personal financial security during the inevitable uncertainties of early-stage business development. The investment portfolio that Victoria had constructed through systematic monthly contributions and strategic asset allocation demonstrated sophisticated understanding of market dynamics, risk management, and long-term wealth accumulation strategies that would serve her well in business financial management. Her experience with portfolio diversification, performance evaluation, and tax optimization provided practical knowledge that directly translated to business financial planning and cash flow management requirements. Her professional expertise in corporate financial analysis, strategic planning, and market evaluation represented valuable capabilities that could differentiate her potential consulting services from generic business advisory offerings available from traditional management consulting firms. Victoria possessed deep understanding of financial modeling, competitive analysis, and strategic positioning that mid-sized companies needed but often could not access through established consulting relationships due to cost considerations or resource limitations. The industry relationships Victoria had developed through her corporate career provided potential client acquisition advantages that many independent consultants lacked during their initial business development phases. Her professional network included executives, financial managers, and strategic planning professionals at companies throughout Northern California who understood her analytical capabilities and might require the kind of specialized financial consulting services she could provide through independent practice. Victoria's technical expertise in financial software platforms, analytical methodologies, and strategic planning frameworks provided operational advantages that would enable her to deliver sophisticated consulting services efficiently, while maintaining quality standards that justified premium pricing. Her familiarity with advanced financial modeling techniques and strategic analysis processes would allow her to compete effectively with larger consulting firms, while providing more personalized attention and cost-effective solutions for mid-sized company clients. The market research phase of Victoria's preparation involved systematic evaluation of consulting service demand within the Northern California region, competitive analysis of existing service providers, and identification of underserved market segments where her expertise could provide distinctive value. This research process utilized the same analytical approaches she had applied to corporate acquisition evaluations and strategic planning projects throughout her professional career. Her analysis revealed substantial demand for financial consulting services among technology companies, professional service firms, and family-owned businesses that required sophisticated analytical support, but could not justify the expense of engaging major consulting firms for projects with limited scope and duration. These market segments represented opportunities where Victoria's expertise and cost structure could provide competitive advantages while generating revenue sufficient to support independent business operations. The competitive landscape analysis demonstrated that established consulting firms focused primarily on large corporate clients with substantial project budgets, creating market gaps in providing sophisticated financial analysis and strategic planning services to mid-sized companies with more limited resources. Independent consultants operating within these market segments often lacked the analytical expertise and technical capabilities that Victoria possessed through her corporate experience and continued professional development. Victoria's business model development process incorporated lessons learned from successful independent consultants, whose career transitions and service offerings provided practical guidance for establishing sustainable practices while avoiding common entrepreneurial pitfalls. Her research identified optimal pricing strategies, service delivery methodologies, and client relationship management approaches that would enable her to generate substantial revenue while maintaining quality standards and professional reputation. The business plan that emerged from Victoria's systematic preparation process outlined consulting services focused on financial analysis, strategic planning, and business development support for mid-sized companies seeking to improve operational efficiency, evaluate expansion opportunities, or prepare for potential acquisition or investment opportunities. These services would utilize her accumulated expertise while addressing legitimate market needs that existing providers served inadequately or at prohibitive cost levels. Her service offerings were designed to provide measurable value through improved financial performance, enhanced strategic positioning, or successful completion of specific business development objectives that justified consulting fees while building long-term client relationships that could generate recurring revenue opportunities. The business model emphasized delivering concrete results that could be evaluated objectively rather than providing generic advice or theoretical recommendations. The operational planning component of Victoria's preparation addressed office space requirements, technology infrastructure needs, professional insurance considerations, and legal structure decisions that would support efficient business operations while maintaining appropriate professional standards and regulatory compliance. These practical considerations reflected her understanding that successful consulting required systematic attention to business fundamentals, rather than relying solely on technical expertise and market relationships. Victoria's decision to maintain her corporate employment while developing her consulting practice during evening and weekend hours reflected strategic risk management that would preserve financial security while enabling gradual business development and market validation. This approach would allow her to test market demand, refine service delivery methodologies, and build client relationships without accepting the financial risks associated with immediate transition to full-time independent practice. The professional development component of her preparation included obtaining additional certifications in business analysis methodologies, strategic planning frameworks, and project management techniques that would enhance her credentials while providing access to professional networks and continuing education opportunities that could support her consulting practice development. These investments in skill enhancement demonstrated commitment to maintaining competitive advantages through continuous learning and capability expansion. Victoria's marketing and business development strategy emphasized leveraging her existing professional relationships while building reputation through delivery of exceptional results for initial clients who could provide references and referrals that would support organic business growth. This approach minimized marketing expenses while building sustainable client acquisition processes based on demonstrated performance and professional reputation rather than advertising or promotional activities. The financial projections that Victoria developed for her consulting practice indicated potential revenue generation that could exceed her corporate salary within 18 months of launching independent operations, assuming successful client acquisition and service delivery execution according to her business plan specifications. These projections were based on conservative assumptions about client demand and pricing that could be adjusted upward if market conditions proved more favorable than anticipated. Her personal financial planning incorporated scenarios for both successful business development and potential challenges that might require extended development periods or market strategy adjustments. This comprehensive planning ensured that pursuing entrepreneurial opportunities would not jeopardize her long-term financial security, regardless of business performance variations during the initial operational phases. The psychological preparation that accompanied Victoria's practical planning involved developing comfort with uncertainty and risk acceptance that entrepreneurial success would require. Her corporate career had provided security and predictability that would be replaced by responsibility for business outcomes and financial performance that could not be guaranteed regardless of preparation quality or execution effort. Victoria's recognition that her accumulated expertise and resources positioned her advantageously for consulting practice development created confidence that balanced realistic assessment of entrepreneurial challenges with optimism about potential achievements. Her systematic approach to preparation demonstrated commitment to pursuing independent business development through strategic planning, rather than impulsive reaction to family disappointment or professional dissatisfaction. The timeline that Victoria established for transitioning from preparation to implementation reflected careful consideration of business development requirements, financial security maintenance, and family relationship management during a period when her entrepreneurial activities would necessarily remain confidential, until she achieved sufficient success to justify disclosure and discussion with family members, who had consistently underestimated her capabilities. Standing in her apartment on a January evening, reviewing the comprehensive business plan and financial projections that represented months of systematic preparation and strategic thinking, Victoria Martinez understood that her transformation from corporate employee to independent entrepreneur was no longer a theoretical possibility, but a carefully planned transition that would demonstrate her true capabilities while generating financial success that exceeded her family's most optimistic expectations for her potential achievements and contributions. The systematic investigation of market opportunities and competitive dynamics that Victoria Martinez undertook during the winter months represented the most comprehensive business research project she had ever conducted, requiring her to apply analytical methodologies from her corporate experience, while exploring industry segments and client needs that extended far beyond her previous professional exposure. This research phase would determine whether her entrepreneurial aspirations were based on realistic market assessments or merely optimistic assumptions about demand for her specialized expertise. Victoria's research methodology incorporated the same rigorous analytical framework she had applied to corporate acquisition evaluations and strategic planning projects throughout her professional career. The process began with comprehensive market segmentation analysis that identified specific industry sectors, company size categories, and geographical regions where demand for sophisticated financial consulting services exceeded current supply capabilities or quality standards provided by existing service providers. The Northern California business environment provided an exceptionally rich research laboratory for evaluating consulting service demand across diverse industry sectors that included technology companies, professional service firms, manufacturing organizations, healthcare providers, and family-owned businesses whose operational complexity required analytical expertise that internal staff often could not provide effectively. Each sector presented distinct consulting opportunities with specific service requirements, pricing expectations, and competitive dynamics that would influence market entry strategies and service delivery approaches. Victoria's analysis of technology sector consulting demand revealed substantial opportunities among mid-sized software companies, hardware manufacturers, and digital service providers that required financial modeling support for expansion planning, acquisition evaluations, and strategic positioning initiatives. These companies typically possessed sophisticated technical capabilities, but often lacked the financial analysis expertise necessary for making complex business development decisions or preparing for investor presentations and acquisition negotiations. The research process included extensive interviews with financial executives, strategic planning managers, and business development professionals at target companies who could provide insights into their current consulting relationships, unmet analytical needs, and decision-making processes for engaging external advisory services. These conversations revealed consistent patterns of dissatisfaction with existing consulting options that were either too expensive for mid-sized company budgets or too generic to address specialized industry requirements effectively. Professional service firms represented another significant market segment where Victoria's expertise could provide distinctive value through financial analysis, strategic positioning, and business development support that would enable these organizations to compete more effectively against larger competitors while expanding their service capabilities and client relationships. Law firms, accounting practices, and consulting organizations frequently required sophisticated financial modeling, but could not justify the expense of engaging major consulting firms for projects with limited scope and duration. The manufacturing sector analysis revealed opportunities among family-owned businesses and mid-sized companies that needed financial analysis support for modernization initiatives, market expansion strategies, and succession planning processes that required objective evaluation of operational efficiency, competitive positioning, and growth potential. These organizations often possessed deep industry expertise but lacked the analytical capabilities necessary for making strategic decisions about technology investments, market development, or business model evolution. Healthcare industry research demonstrated substantial demand for financial consulting services among independent practices, specialized clinics, and regional healthcare systems that faced increasing regulatory complexity and competitive pressures requiring sophisticated financial analysis and strategic planning support. The industry's rapid consolidation created opportunities for organizations seeking to evaluate partnership opportunities, acquisition proposals, or strategic positioning initiatives that required objective financial analysis and market assessment. Victoria's investigation of family-owned business consulting needs revealed a particularly compelling market segment where her expertise could provide exceptional value through succession planning support, financial restructuring analysis, and strategic development initiatives that would enable these organizations to compete effectively while preparing for generational transitions or potential sale opportunities. Many family businesses possessed substantial assets and revenue generation capabilities, but lacked access to sophisticated financial analysis that could optimize their strategic positioning and long-term value creation. The competitive analysis component of Victoria's research involved systematic evaluation of existing consulting service providers within each target market segment, including major consulting firms, regional advisory practices, and independent consultants whose service offerings and market positioning would represent direct competition for her potential practice. This analysis revealed significant market gaps where demand for sophisticated financial analysis exceeded current supply capabilities or service quality standards. Major consulting firms typically focused on large corporate clients with substantial project budgets that justified their premium pricing and resource allocation requirements. These firms possess sophisticated analytical capabilities, but often could not provide cost-effective services for mid-sized companies with more limited consulting budgets or specialized industry requirements that did not align with their standardized service delivery methodologies. Regional consulting practices generally offered more competitive pricing, but often lacked the analytical sophistication and technical expertise that Victoria could provide through her corporate financial analysis background and continued professional development. Many regional firms focused on general business advisory services rather than the specialized financial modeling and strategic analysis capabilities that distinguished Victoria's potential consulting offerings from generic business consulting services. Independent consultants operating within target market segments typically possessed industry experience, but often lacked the analytical expertise and technical capabilities necessary for conducting sophisticated financial modeling, competitive analysis, and strategic planning projects that required advanced methodologies and software platforms. Victoria's corporate background provided competitive advantages in analytical sophistication that could justify premium pricing while delivering measurable value that exceeded client expectations. The pricing analysis component of Victoria's research involved systematic evaluation of consulting fee structures, project billing methodologies, and value proposition communication strategies that successful independent consultants had employed to build sustainable practices while maintaining competitive positioning within target market segments. This research provided practical guidance for establishing pricing policies that would generate sufficient revenue while remaining competitive with alternative service provider options. Her investigation revealed that successful independent consultants typically charged hourly rates ranging from $150 to $300 per hour, depending on project complexity, client size, and specialized expertise requirements. Project-based pricing structures often provided opportunities for generating higher effective hourly rates while offering clients predictable cost structures that facilitated budget planning and project approval processes within client organizations. Value-based pricing approaches represented the most lucrative fee structures for consultants who could demonstrate measurable financial impact through their analytical work and strategic recommendations. These pricing methodologies required careful documentation of project outcomes and client results that justified premium fees, while building reputation and referral opportunities that could support organic business growth and market expansion. Victoria's analysis of successful consultant marketing strategies revealed that reputation building and referral generation represented the most effective approaches for acquiring new clients within target market segments. Professional networking, industry association participation, and thought leadership development through speaking engagements and published articles provided sustainable methods for building market visibility while demonstrating expertise that differentiated consulting services from generic advisory offerings. The service delivery methodology research component involved investigation of project management approaches, client communication protocols, and quality assurance processes that enabled independent consultants to deliver sophisticated analytical services efficiently while maintaining standards that justified premium pricing and generated client satisfaction levels sufficient to support repeat business and referral opportunities. Technology infrastructure requirements represented a critical component of Victoria's operational planning research that addressed software platform needs, data security considerations, and communication systems that would enable her to deliver consulting services professionally while maintaining cost structures that supported competitive pricing and acceptable profit margins. Her corporate experience with advanced financial software platforms provided operational advantages that could differentiate her service delivery capabilities from consultants with more limited technical resources. Professional development opportunities within the consulting industry became a focus area for Victoria's research as she investigated certification programs, continuing education requirements, and industry association memberships that could enhance her credentials while providing access to professional networks and business development opportunities that would support her practice growth and market positioning. The research phase also included systematic evaluation of successful consultant career trajectories and business development strategies that provided practical guidance for transitioning from corporate employment to independent practice, while avoiding common entrepreneurial pitfalls that could jeopardize financial security or professional reputation. These case studies revealed consistent patterns of gradual business development, systematic market validation, and strategic risk management that successful consultants had employed to build sustainable practices. Legal and regulatory considerations represented another important research area where Victoria investigated business structure options, professional liability insurance requirements, contract development needs, and compliance obligations that would affect her consulting practice operations. These practical considerations required careful planning to ensure that her business development activities would meet appropriate professional standards while protecting her personal assets and maintaining regulatory compliance. The comprehensive market research and competitive analysis that Victoria completed during this phase provided the foundation for developing specific business development strategies and service delivery approaches that would maximize her probability of achieving entrepreneurial success while validating the market assumptions underlying her business plan and financial projections. Standing in her apartment on a February evening, reviewing the extensive market research documentation and competitive analysis reports that represented months of systematic investigation and strategic planning, Victoria Martinez understood that her entrepreneurial preparation had evolved from theoretical possibility to concrete business opportunity that could generate financial success and professional satisfaction that far exceeded her family's limited expectations and assessment of her capabilities and potential contributions. The transition from comprehensive market research and business planning to the psychological preparation required for entrepreneurial action exposed Victoria Martinez to internal conflicts and self-doubts that her systematic analytical approach could not resolve through data collection and strategic planning methodologies. Despite months of careful preparation that had demonstrated substantial market opportunities and competitive advantages, Victoria found herself confronting deeply embedded fears and limiting beliefs that threatened to prevent her from acting on the business development plans she had so methodically constructed. The psychological challenges that emerged during this phase reflected years of internalized messages about her capabilities, limitations, and appropriate role within family and professional structures that had shaped her self-perception in ways that contradicted the objective evidence of her accomplishments and potential. Roberto and Carmen's consistent underestimation of her business acumen and strategic thinking abilities had created internal voices that questioned whether her entrepreneurial aspirations represented realistic assessment of her capabilities or dangerous overconfidence that could result in professional embarrassment and financial disaster. Victoria's corporate career had provided regular external validation through performance evaluations, salary increases, and project success that confirmed her analytical capabilities and professional competence. However, the transition to independent business development would eliminate these external validation sources while requiring her to depend entirely on internal confidence and self-assessment that had been systematically undermined by family dynamics and societal expectations about appropriate career paths for responsible, risk-averse professionals. The fear of failure that Victoria experienced was not simply concern about potential financial losses or professional setbacks, but rather terror about confirming her family's assumptions regarding her limitations and proving that their inheritance arrangements accurately reflected her actual capabilities, rather than representing unfair underestimation of her potential. The prospect of entrepreneurial failure carried emotional weight that extended far beyond practical consequences to include validation of every dismissive comment and limiting assumption her family had expressed throughout her adult life. The imposter syndrome that accompanied Victoria's entrepreneurial preparation manifested as persistent questioning of whether her corporate success had been achieved through competence or merely circumstantial advantages like supportive colleagues, favorable market conditions, and organizational structures that had compensated for her actual limitations. These self-doubts created mental scenarios where potential consulting clients would quickly recognize her inadequacies and reject her services, exposing her entrepreneurial ambitions as delusional overreach that would result in professional humiliation and financial loss. Victoria's analytical mind, which had served her effectively throughout her corporate career, became a liability during this psychological preparation phase, as she applied rigorous evaluation methodologies to her own capabilities and found reasons to question every assumption underlying her business development plans. The same critical thinking skills that had identified market opportunities and competitive advantages now generated detailed analyses of potential failure scenarios and reasons why her entrepreneurial aspirations might be based on unrealistic self-assessment rather than objective evaluation of her qualifications and market positioning. The perfectionist tendencies that had contributed to Victoria's corporate success created additional psychological barriers to entrepreneurial action, as she recognized that business development would require accepting uncertainty and making decisions with incomplete information that contradicted her preference for comprehensive analysis and risk mitigation. Her corporate environment had provided frameworks for decision-making that minimized personal responsibility for outcomes while ensuring that failures could be attributed to market conditions, resource limitations, or strategic decisions made by senior management rather than individual inadequacy. Independent consulting would eliminate these protective structures while creating direct correlation between her personal capabilities and business outcomes that could not be attributed to external factors or organizational support systems. The prospect of accepting complete responsibility for success or failure activated deep-seated fears about her worthiness and competence that had been carefully managed through her choice of corporate employment and risk-averse lifestyle decisions. Victoria's relationship with money and financial security reflected conservative attitudes that had been reinforced by her parents, immigrant experience, and emphasis on stability over opportunity maximization. The accumulated savings that provided her with entrepreneurial capital also represented security that had required years of disciplined sacrifice and careful financial management. The prospect of risking these resources for uncertain business outcomes created anxiety that extended beyond rational risk assessment to include emotional attachment to financial security as validation of her responsible decision-making and personal worth. The fear of disappointing her family by failing in business development that they had never supported or understood created additional psychological complexity as Victoria recognized that entrepreneurial success would require not only proving her capabilities, but also challenging family assumptions and dynamics that had provided stability and belonging throughout her adult life. Success would validate her self-assessment, while potentially creating tension with people whose love and approval remained important, despite their consistent underestimation of her potential. The social isolation that would accompany transitioning from corporate employment to independent consulting created concerns about losing professional relationships and collegial support that had provided intellectual stimulation and emotional connection throughout her career. Victoria's corporate network had developed over years of shared project experiences and professional development that would be difficult to maintain while building competing business interests that might be viewed as conflicts of interest or professional disloyalty by former colleagues and supervisors. The internal dialogue that characterized Victoria's psychological preparation alternated between rational confidence based on objective assessment of her capabilities and market opportunities, and emotional fear based on internalized limitations and worst-case scenario planning that emphasized potential disasters rather than probable outcomes. This mental conflict created exhausting cycles of motivation and discouragement that threatened to prevent decisive action despite the thoroughness of her practical preparation and business planning. Victoria's journal entries during this period documented the internal struggle between her analytical understanding of entrepreneurial opportunity and her emotional attachment to security and external validation that had shaped her identity and self-worth throughout her professional development. The writing process itself became therapeutic as she recognized patterns of self-doubt and limiting beliefs that had prevented her from pursuing opportunities that aligned with her actual capabilities and interests, rather than her family's expectations and risk tolerance. The breakthrough in Victoria's internal battle occurred through systematic examination of her track record of overcoming challenges and achieving objectives that had initially seemed beyond her capabilities. Her college academic success, corporate career advancement, and sophisticated financial planning achievements provided concrete evidence of her ability to master complex skills and navigate uncertain situations successfully when she committed to focused effort and strategic planning. Victoria's realization that her family's limiting beliefs about her capabilities were based on outdated information and cultural biases rather than accurate assessment of her professional development and accumulated expertise created psychological freedom to pursue opportunities that aligned with her actual qualifications rather than their perceptions of her limitations. The inheritance arrangements that had initially felt like rejection and underestimation could be reframed as motivation to demonstrate capabilities that exceeded their most optimistic expectations. The mental reframing process that Victoria employed involved systematically replacing limiting beliefs with evidence-based assessments of her capabilities and market opportunities. Instead of focusing on potential failure scenarios, she began emphasizing successful outcomes that were supported by her research and preparation. This cognitive shift required conscious effort to maintain optimistic, rather than pessimistic interpretations of uncertain situations, while acknowledging risks without being paralyzed by them. Victoria's decision to begin her entrepreneurial transition with limited scope and graduated risk exposure provided psychological comfort that addressed her concerns about financial security, while enabling her to test market demand and service delivery capabilities without committing to irreversible changes in her career trajectory. This approach allowed her to build confidence through early success, while maintaining options for adjusting her strategy based on market response and personal satisfaction with independent business development. The support system that Victoria developed during this phase included professional mentors, successful entrepreneurs, and career counselors who could provide objective perspectives on her capabilities and market opportunities, while offering encouragement that counteracted family skepticism and internal self-doubt. These relationships provided external validation that helped her maintain psychological equilibrium during periods when limiting beliefs threatened to overwhelm her rational confidence in her business development plans. Victoria's recognition that her internal battle represented the most significant obstacle to entrepreneurial success created urgency around developing mental strategies for managing fear and uncertainty, while maintaining focus on systematic execution of her business development plans. The psychological preparation became as important as market research and financial planning in determining whether her entrepreneurial aspirations would translate into successful business development or remain theoretical possibilities limited by internal barriers rather than external obstacles. The meditation and mindfulness practices that Victoria incorporated into her daily routine during this phase provided tools for managing anxiety while maintaining clarity about her objectives and priorities. These techniques helped her distinguish between legitimate concerns that required strategic planning and irrational fears that reflected limiting beliefs rather than actual risks or obstacles to success. Standing in her apartment on a March evening, reviewing the business development timeline and implementation milestones that would transform her entrepreneurial preparation into decisive action, Victoria Martinez understood that her internal battle represented the final obstacle to pursuing opportunities that could validate her capabilities while generating success that exceeded her family's assumptions about her potential and limitations. The moment that would irrevocably commit Victoria Martinez to her entrepreneurial transformation arrived through an unexpected opportunity that demanded immediate decision-making and eliminated the luxury of extended deliberation that had characterized her months of careful preparation and strategic planning. The catalyst emerged from her corporate network in the form of a complex financial restructuring project that would test her analytical capabilities while providing the perfect vehicle for launching her independent consulting practice under circumstances that minimized risk while maximizing potential for demonstrating her expertise to prospective clients. Michael Chen, the Chief Financial Officer of Pacific Innovation Technologies, contacted Victoria on a Tuesday morning in April with an urgent request for assistance with a sophisticated financial analysis project that his internal team lacked the specialized expertise to complete within the required timeline. Pacific Innovation was a rapidly growing software development company that provided custom business applications for manufacturing and logistics companies throughout the western United States, and they faced a strategic decision about potential acquisition of a complementary technology firm that would expand their service capabilities while requiring substantial capital investment and operational integration. The acquisition target, Dataflow Systems, offered proprietary software solutions for supply chain optimization and inventory management that would provide Pacific Innovation with enhanced competitive positioning within target market segments, while creating opportunities for cross-selling services to existing clients. However, the proposed acquisition required comprehensive financial due diligence analysis, valuation modeling, and integration cost assessment that exceeded the analytical resources available within Pacific Innovation's finance department. Michael's request represented exactly the type of sophisticated consulting opportunity that Victoria had identified during her market research as providing optimal alignment between her analytical expertise and client needs that existing consulting resources could not address effectively. The project's scope included financial statement analysis, cash flow modeling, competitive valuation assessment, and strategic integration planning that would utilize her most advanced analytical capabilities while demonstrating the value proposition she could provide to similar clients throughout the region. The urgency of the project timeline created both opportunity and pressure that would determine whether Victoria possessed the confidence and commitment necessary to pursue independent consulting, or whether she would continue deferring entrepreneurial action through extended preparation and risk mitigation planning. Michael needed comprehensive analysis completed within 6 weeks to support Pacific Innovation's board meeting, where acquisition approval decisions would be finalized, creating deadline pressure that eliminated her option for gradual transition from corporate employment to independent practice. Victoria's initial response to Michael's request reflected the internal conflict between entrepreneurial ambition and security seeking that had characterized her psychological preparation during previous months. Her immediate instinct was to recommend established consulting firms that possessed resources and reputation for handling complex acquisition analysis projects, thereby maintaining her corporate employment security while avoiding personal exposure to potential failure or client dissatisfaction that could damage her professional reputation. However, Michael's follow-up conversation revealed that Pacific Innovation had already contacted several major consulting firms whose pricing exceeded their project budget limitations, while their resource availability could not accommodate the required timeline for analysis completion. The market gap that Victoria had identified through systematic research was being confirmed through real-world client needs that existing service providers could not address effectively within required cost and timeline parameters. The fee structure that Michael proposed for the project exceeded Victoria's monthly corporate salary, while requiring analytical work that directly aligned with her expertise and professional interests. The financial opportunity represented immediate validation of her market research and business planning while providing income that would demonstrate the wealth-building potential of independent consulting practice compared to corporate employment limitations. Victoria's decision-making process regarding the Pacific Innovation Project required rapid assessment of practical considerations that included corporate employment obligations, conflict of interest policies, project execution capabilities, and personal readiness for accepting entrepreneurial responsibility without the safety net of extended preparation and gradual transition planning. The opportunity demanded commitment to independent business development under circumstances that eliminated her option for maintaining corporate security while testing entrepreneurial viability. The corporate policy review that Victoria conducted revealed that her employment agreement included restrictive covenants regarding outside consulting activities that could create competitive conflicts with her employer's business interests. However, the Pacific Innovation Project involved industry sectors and analytical methodologies that did not overlap with her corporate employer's service offerings or client relationships, creating legal and ethical clearance for pursuing the engagement without violating professional obligations or employment restrictions. The project execution assessment required Victoria to evaluate whether her analytical capabilities, technology resources, and time management skills were sufficient for delivering sophisticated consulting services independently, without organizational support systems that had facilitated her corporate project success. This evaluation forced honest assessment of her individual versus institutional capabilities, while determining whether her confidence in entrepreneurial readiness was based on accurate self-assessment or optimistic assumptions about her independent performance potential. Victoria's analysis of project requirements confirmed that her financial modeling expertise, industry knowledge, and analytical software proficiency provided all technical capabilities necessary for completing the acquisition analysis successfully. Her corporate experience with similar projects had developed methodologies and frameworks that could be applied directly to the Pacific Innovation engagement, while her accumulated professional judgment would enable her to provide strategic insights that justified premium consulting fees. The time management evaluation revealed that completing the project within the required timeline would require approximately 25 hours per week of analytical work during evening and weekend periods, while maintaining her corporate employment responsibilities. This schedule would test her ability to manage competing priorities while delivering quality consulting services that met client expectations and established her reputation for professional excellence and reliable project completion. Victoria's decision to accept the Pacific Innovation engagement represented her definitive commitment to entrepreneurial transition, regardless of uncertainty about long-term business development success or family reaction to her independent consulting activities. The project would require her to register as an independent business entity, establish professional insurance coverage, develop client contracts, and create operational systems that would support ongoing consulting practice development beyond the initial engagement. The business registration process that Victoria completed during the week following her project acceptance formalized her transition from corporate employee contemplating entrepreneurial possibilities to independent consultant accepting legal and financial responsibility for business operations and client service delivery. Martinez Financial Consulting became her official business identity while creating psychological commitment to entrepreneurial success that eliminated her option for treating independent practice as theoretical exploration rather than professional commitment. The professional insurance application process required Victoria to document her analytical expertise, educational credentials, and professional experience, while accepting coverage for potential errors and omissions that could result from her consulting recommendations and strategic advice. This insurance requirement created awareness of professional liability and responsibility that exceeded her corporate employment obligations while confirming her readiness to accept accountability for independent business decisions and client outcomes. The client contract development process forced Victoria to articulate her service delivery methodologies, project timeline commitments, and fee structures in legally binding terms that would govern her relationship with Pacific Innovation while establishing precedents for future consulting engagements. The contract negotiation required confidence in her analytical capabilities and professional judgment while creating legal obligations for delivering sophisticated services that met specified quality and timeline requirements. Victoria's communication with Michael Chen regarding project initiation and service delivery expectations demonstrated her transition from corporate employee discussing theoretical consulting possibilities to professional consultant accepting specific project responsibilities and client commitments. The tone and content of these business development conversations reflected her psychological transformation from preparation to implementation, while establishing her credibility and expertise within the professional consulting relationship. The workspace preparation that Victoria completed for the Pacific Innovation Project involved converting her apartment dining room into a professional office environment with appropriate technology infrastructure, reference materials, and communication systems that would support sophisticated analytical work while maintaining professional image during client video conferences and project presentations. This physical transformation of her living space represented tangible commitment to entrepreneurial business development beyond theoretical planning. The first week of project execution provided immediate validation of Victoria's analytical capabilities and independent work management skills, while generating client confidence in her expertise and professional service delivery quality. The financial statement analysis and preliminary valuation modeling that she completed exceeded Michael's expectations while demonstrating analytical sophistication that justified the consulting fees and established foundation for positive client references and potential future engagements. Victoria's recognition that she was successfully delivering complex consulting services while managing corporate employment responsibilities created confidence that eliminated her remaining doubts about entrepreneurial capability and market positioning. The project execution confirmed that her months of preparation and business planning had accurately assessed her qualifications and market opportunities while providing practical experience with independent consulting that validated her strategic analysis and capability assessment. The psychological transformation that accompanied Victoria's first week as an independent consultant involved shifting from employee mindset, focused on fulfilling assigned responsibilities within organizational structures, to entrepreneurial perspective, emphasizing value creation, client satisfaction, and business development opportunities that could generate ongoing success and professional growth. This mindset transition represented fundamental change in her professional identity and career trajectory that eliminated her option for returning to purely corporate employment without maintaining independent consulting capabilities. Standing in her converted home office on a Friday evening, reviewing the comprehensive financial analysis and strategic recommendations that would be delivered to Pacific Innovation the following week, Victoria Martinez understood that her entrepreneurial transformation had become irreversible commitment to independent business development that would validate her capabilities while demonstrating success that exceeded her family's limited expectations and assessment of her professional potential and business acumen. The reality of independent consulting practice proved significantly more complex and demanding than Victoria Martinez had anticipated during her months of theoretical preparation and strategic planning. The Pacific Innovation Technologies project, which had provided the catalyst for her entrepreneurial commitment, exposed her to operational challenges and professional pressures that could not be fully understood without direct experience of client accountability and business management responsibility that extended far beyond the analytical expertise she had developed through corporate employment. The first significant challenge emerged during the second week of the Pacific Innovation engagement, when Victoria discovered that the financial data provided by the acquisition target, data flow systems, contained inconsistencies and gaps that required additional investigation and analysis that had not been included in her original project scope and timeline estimates. The incomplete documentation and questionable accounting practices that she identified during preliminary analysis suggested potential financial irregularities that could affect the acquisition valuation and strategic recommendations she would provide to Michael Chen and the Pacific Innovation Board of Directors. Victoria's corporate experience had included similar situations where data quality issues required additional analytical work and timeline adjustments. But those projects had been managed within organizational structures that provided administrative support, legal counsel, and senior management guidance for addressing complex situations that exceeded original project parameters. As an independent consultant, she faced these challenges without institutional support, while maintaining sole responsibility for project outcomes and client satisfaction. The decision about how to address the data flow systems documentation issues required Victoria to balance professional integrity with client service delivery, while managing potential scope expansion that could affect project timeline and fee arrangements. Her recommendation to conduct additional due diligence analysis would require more time and resources than originally contracted, while potentially revealing problems that could complicate or prevent the acquisition that Pacific Innovation had been eager to complete. Victoria's communication with Michael Chen about the data quality concerns demonstrated the complexity of client relationship management that extended beyond technical analysis to include strategic counseling and expectation management that required diplomatic skills and business judgment that her corporate experience had not fully developed. Her presentation of the documentation issues needed to convey the seriousness of potential problems while maintaining client confidence in her analytical capabilities and professional recommendations. The expanded scope requirements that resulted from Victoria's due diligence findings increased her project workload by approximately 30%, while requiring specialized forensic accounting techniques and legal research that pushed her analytical capabilities beyond familiar methodologies into areas where her expertise was less comprehensive. The additional work demanded evening and weekend effort that threatened to overwhelm her ability to maintain corporate employment responsibilities while delivering quality consulting services within the required timeline. Victoria's time management struggles during this period revealed the physical and psychological demands of independent business operations that corporate employment structures had previously managed through administrative support, resource allocation, and responsibility distribution among multiple team members. As an independent consultant, she assumed complete accountability for project execution while managing business development, client communication, administrative tasks, and technical analysis that required diverse skills and sustained attention to detail. The isolation of independent consulting became particularly apparent during complex analytical challenges that would have benefited from collaborative problem-solving and peer review that Victoria had relied upon throughout her corporate career. The data flow systems analysis required sophisticated financial modeling and strategic assessment that she needed to complete independently while maintaining confidence in her conclusions and recommendations, despite lacking colleagues who could provide technical input or validate her analytical approaches. Victoria's recognition that consulting success required business development capabilities beyond technical expertise created additional pressure, as she realized that completing the Pacific Innovation project successfully would generate opportunities for additional engagements only if she could effectively market her services and build professional relationships that would support ongoing client acquisition. The analytical work that consumed most of her available time left limited capacity for networking activities and business development initiatives that would determine her long-term consulting practice viability. The financial management aspects of independent consulting proved more complex than Victoria had anticipated during her preparation phase. The project-based income structure created cash flow irregularities that differed significantly from the predictable monthly salary payments she had received throughout her corporate career. The need to manage business expenses, tax obligations, and professional insurance costs while maintaining personal financial security required careful budgeting and resource allocation that added administrative complexity to her consulting operations. Victoria's first invoice to Pacific Innovation required her to navigate professional billing practices, payment terms negotiation, and account receivable management that represented business skills she had not developed through corporate employment. The 30-day payment terms that Michael Chen requested created cash flow delays that affected her personal financial planning, while requiring her to maintain sufficient reserves to cover business and personal expenses during collection periods that extended beyond project completion. The professional development requirements for independent consulting became apparent, as Victoria recognized that maintaining competitive positioning would require ongoing education and certification activities that corporate employers had previously provided through organized training programs and professional development budgets. As an independent consultant, she needed to invest personal time and financial resources in maintaining analytical skills and industry knowledge while building expertise in business development and client relationship management areas that corporate structures had previously handled through specialized departments. Victoria's relationship with her corporate employer became increasingly complicated, as her consulting activities required time and attention that potentially conflicted with her employee obligations and professional responsibilities. The effort required to maintain performance standards in both roles created stress and fatigue that affected her effectiveness in each area, while raising questions about long-term sustainability of her dual career approach that had been intended as a gradual transition strategy. The psychological pressure of maintaining professional reputation while building independent consulting credibility created anxiety about potential failure that could affect both her corporate employment security and her entrepreneurial aspirations. The visibility of her consulting activities within professional networks that included colleagues and industry contacts created accountability for success that extended beyond financial considerations to include professional standing and career trajectory implications. Victoria's recognition that her family remained unaware of her consulting activities added emotional complexity as she realized that her entrepreneurial success or failure would eventually require disclosure and discussion of business development initiatives that contradicted their assumptions about her capabilities and appropriate career choices. The prospect of family reaction to her independent business activities created additional motivation for achieving significant success, while generating anxiety about potential criticism or skepticism if her consulting practice failed to meet expectations. The technical challenges of the data flow systems analysis required Victoria to develop forensic accounting skills and legal research capabilities that extended beyond her traditional financial analysis expertise, while maintaining quality standards that would support her professional credibility and client satisfaction. The additional learning curve required personal time investment that competed with business development activities and work-life balance maintenance that had already become strained through her dual career responsibilities. Victoria's client presentation preparation for the Pacific Innovation Board meeting created performance pressure that differed significantly from corporate project presentations, where organizational support and shared responsibility had provided psychological security and resource backup if questions or challenges exceeded her individual expertise. As an independent consultant, she would represent sole authority for analytical conclusions and strategic recommendations that could affect major business decisions and substantial financial investments. The professional image management requirements for independent consulting included developing marketing materials, maintaining professional appearance standards, and building online presence through website development and social media platforms that required skills and time investment beyond her analytical expertise. These business development necessities competed with billable project work while representing essential components of sustainable consulting practice that could not be deferred without affecting long-term success potential. Victoria's recognition that consulting practice success would require systematic client acquisition processes and relationship management capabilities created awareness that her analytical expertise represented only one component of the diverse skill set required for entrepreneurial business development. The need to become proficient in sales, marketing, and business development activities that had been handled by specialized corporate departments created learning challenges that extended well beyond her technical comfort zone. The first month of independent consulting revealed that entrepreneurial success would require sustained effort and capability development across multiple business functions, while maintaining analytical excellence that justified premium pricing and client satisfaction. Victoria's growing understanding of consulting practice complexity created respect for the challenges that successful entrepreneurs had overcome, while building confidence in her ability to develop necessary capabilities through systematic effort and strategic learning. Standing in her home office on a late April evening, preparing final recommendations for the Pacific Innovation Board presentation that would conclude her first major consulting engagement, Victoria Martinez understood that her early struggles with independent business operations represented normal entrepreneurial challenges, rather than evidence of inadequate preparation or unrealistic expectations about consulting practice development and long-term success potential. The reality of independent consulting practice proved significantly more complex and demanding than Victoria Martinez had anticipated during her months of theoretical preparation and strategic planning. The Pacific Innovation Technologies project, which had provided the catalyst for her entrepreneurial commitment, exposed her to operational challenges and professional pressures that could not be fully understood without direct experience of client accountability and business management responsibility that extended far beyond the analytical expertise she had developed through corporate employment. The first significant challenge emerged during the second week of the Pacific Innovation engagement, when Victoria discovered that the financial data provided by the acquisition target, data flow systems, contained inconsistencies and gaps that required additional investigation and analysis that had not been included in her original project scope and timeline estimates. The incomplete documentation and questionable accounting practices that she identified during preliminary analysis suggested potential financial irregularities that could affect the acquisition valuation and strategic recommendations she would provide to Michael Chen and the Pacific Innovation Board of Directors. Victoria's corporate experience had included similar situations where data quality issues required additional analytical work and timeline adjustments, but those projects had been managed within organizational structures that provided administrative support, legal counsel, and senior management guidance for addressing complex situations that exceeded original project parameters. As an independent consultant, she faced these challenges without institutional support, while maintaining sole responsibility for project outcomes and client satisfaction. The decision about how to address the data flow systems documentation issues required Victoria to balance professional integrity with client service delivery, while managing potential scope expansion that could affect project timeline and fee arrangements. Her recommendation to conduct additional due diligence analysis would require more time and resources than originally contracted, while potentially revealing problems that could complicate or prevent the acquisition that Pacific Innovation had been eager to complete. Victoria's communication with Michael Chen about the data quality concerns demonstrated the complexity of client relationship management that extended beyond technical analysis to include strategic counseling and expectation management that required diplomatic skills and business judgment that her corporate experience had not fully developed. Her presentation of the documentation issues needed to convey the seriousness of potential problems while maintaining client confidence in her analytical capabilities and professional recommendations. The expanded scope requirements that resulted from Victoria's due diligence findings increased her project workload by approximately 30%, while requiring specialized forensic accounting techniques and legal research that pushed her analytical capabilities beyond familiar methodologies into areas where her expertise was less comprehensive. The additional work demanded evening and weekend effort that threatened to overwhelm her ability to maintain corporate employment responsibilities while delivering quality consulting services within the required timeline. Victoria's time management struggles during this period revealed the physical and psychological demands of independent business operations that corporate employment structures had previously managed through administrative support, resource allocation, and responsibility distribution among multiple team members. As an independent consultant, she assumed complete accountability for project execution, while managing business development, client communication, administrative tasks, and technical analysis that required diverse skills and sustained attention to detail. The isolation of independent consulting became particularly apparent during complex analytical challenges that would have benefited from collaborative problem-solving and peer review that Victoria had relied upon throughout her corporate career. The data flow systems analysis required sophisticated financial modeling and strategic assessment that she needed to complete independently, while maintaining confidence in her conclusions and recommendations, despite lacking colleagues who could provide technical input or validate her analytical approaches. Victoria's recognition that consulting success required business development capabilities beyond technical expertise created additional pressure, as she realized that completing the Pacific Innovation Project successfully would generate opportunities for additional engagements only if she could effectively market her services and build professional relationships that would support ongoing client acquisition. The analytical work that consumed most of her available time left limited capacity for networking activities and business development initiatives that would determine her long-term consulting practice viability. The financial management aspects of independent consulting proved more complex than Victoria had anticipated during her preparation phase. The project-based income structure created cash flow irregularities that differed significantly from the predictable monthly salary payments she had received throughout her corporate career. The need to manage business expenses, tax obligations, and professional insurance costs while maintaining personal financial security required careful budgeting and resource allocation that added administrative complexity to her consulting operations. Victoria's first invoice to Pacific Innovation required her to navigate professional billing practices, payment terms negotiation, and account receivable management that represented business skills she had not developed through corporate employment. The 30-day payment terms that Michael Chen requested created cash flow delays that affected her personal financial planning, while requiring her to maintain sufficient reserves to cover business and personal expenses during collection periods that extended beyond project completion. The professional development requirements for independent consulting became apparent as Victoria recognized that maintaining competitive positioning would require ongoing education and certification activities that corporate employers had previously provided through organized training programs and professional development budgets. As an independent consultant, she needed to invest personal time and financial resources in maintaining analytical skills and industry knowledge, while building expertise in business development and client relationship management areas that corporate structures had previously handled through specialized departments. Victoria's relationship with her corporate employer became increasingly complicated as her consulting activities required time and attention that potentially conflicted with her employee obligations and professional responsibilities. The effort required to maintain performance standards in both roles created stress and fatigue that affected her effectiveness in each area, while raising questions about long-term sustainability of her dual-career approach that had been intended as a gradual transition strategy. The psychological pressure of maintaining professional reputation while building independent consulting credibility created anxiety about potential failure that could affect both her corporate employment security and her entrepreneurial aspirations. The visibility of her consulting activities within professional networks that included colleagues and industry contacts created accountability for success that extended beyond financial considerations to include professional standing and career trajectory implications. Victoria's recognition that her family remained unaware of her consulting activities added emotional complexity as she realized that her entrepreneurial success or failure would eventually require disclosure and discussion of business development initiatives that contradicted their assumptions about her capabilities and appropriate career choices. The prospect of family reaction to her independent business activities created additional motivation for achieving significant success while generating anxiety about potential criticism or skepticism if her consulting practice failed to meet expectations. The technical challenges of the data flow systems analysis required Victoria to develop forensic accounting skills and legal research capabilities that extended beyond her traditional financial analysis expertise while maintaining quality standards that would support her professional credibility and client satisfaction. The additional learning curve required personal time investment that competed with business development activities and work-life balance maintenance that had already become strained through her dual career responsibilities. Victoria's client preparation for the Pacific Innovation Board meeting created performance pressure that differed significantly from corporate project presentations, where organizational support and shared responsibility had provided psychological security and resource backup if questions or challenges exceeded her individual expertise. As an independent consultant, she would represent sole authority for analytical conclusions and strategic recommendations, that could affect major business decisions and substantial financial investments. The professional image management requirements for independent consulting included developing marketing materials, maintaining professional appearance standards, and building online presence through website development and social media platforms that required skills and time investment beyond her analytical expertise. These business development necessities competed with billable project work while representing essential components of sustainable consulting practice that could not be deferred without affecting long-term success potential. Victoria's recognition that consulting practice success would require systematic client acquisition processes and relationship management capabilities created awareness that her analytical expertise represented only one component of the diverse skill set required for entrepreneurial business development. The need to become proficient in sales, marketing, and business development activities that had been handled by specialized corporate departments created learning challenges that extended well beyond her technical comfort zone. The first month of independent consulting revealed that entrepreneurial success would require sustained effort and capability development across multiple business functions, while maintaining analytical excellence that justified premium pricing and client satisfaction. Victoria's growing understanding of consulting practice complexity created respect for the challenges that successful entrepreneurs had overcome, while building confidence in her ability to develop necessary capabilities through systematic effort and strategic learning. Standing in her home office on a late April evening, preparing final recommendations for the Pacific Innovation Board presentation that would conclude her first major consulting engagement, Victoria Martinez understood that her early struggles with independent business operations represented normal entrepreneurial challenges rather than evidence of inadequate preparation or unrealistic expectations about consulting practice development and long-term success potential. The breakthrough that would transform Victoria Martinez's consulting practice from promising startup to established professional service provider arrived through an unexpected referral that demonstrated how excellence in client service delivery could generate business development opportunities that exceeded traditional networking and marketing efforts in both effectiveness and credibility. The opportunity emerged from her successful completion of the Pacific Innovation Technologies engagement, which had impressed Michael Chen sufficiently to recommend her services to Alexandra Thompson, the Chief Executive Officer of Northwest Manufacturing Solutions. Northwest Manufacturing Solutions represented exactly the type of sophisticated client that Victoria had identified during her market research, as offering optimal alignment between her analytical capabilities and complex business challenges that required specialized expertise beyond the resources available through internal finance departments or generic consulting services. The company manufactured precision components for aerospace and defense industries, while serving clients that demanded exceptional quality standards and regulatory compliance that created operational complexity, requiring advanced financial analysis and strategic planning support. Alexandra Thompson contacted Victoria during the third week of June with a comprehensive consulting opportunity that would test her analytical capabilities, while providing the type of high-visibility project that could establish her reputation within the Northern California manufacturing sector and generate additional referral opportunities among companies facing similar strategic challenges and operational improvement requirements. The project scope involved conducting comprehensive operational efficiency analysis and cost optimization assessment for Northwest Manufacturing Solutions, 3 production facilities, which had experienced declining profit margins despite stable revenue performance, that suggested systemic inefficiencies requiring sophisticated analytical investigation and strategic restructuring recommendations. The engagement would require Victoria to evaluate manufacturing processes, supply chain relationships, overhead allocation methodologies, and organizational structure effectiveness, while developing implementation strategies that could restore profitability without compromising quality standards or client satisfaction. The analytical complexity of the Northwest manufacturing engagement exceeded any project Victoria had undertaken during her corporate career, requiring her to develop expertise in manufacturing cost accounting, operational efficiency measurement, and strategic restructuring methodologies that extended her capabilities beyond traditional financial analysis into comprehensive business transformation consulting. The opportunity represented validation of her market positioning while demanding professional growth that would enhance her consulting service offerings and competitive differentiation. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.